Hello. I'm speaking to you from inside Leo. Because the moon is in Leo right now, and where the moon goes, I go. There's been something about feet all day. I was running today. I haven't ran in a long time. But I got the feeling to run. And I was trail running. And it felt great. And I was noticing how much I liked trail running because it forces you to put your awareness in your feet. If you aren't aware of your feet, you will fall. And my attention kept being pulled back into them, into that. And how good it felt to feel connected to my feet, and my feet to feel connected to the ground, and for the whole thing to be moving at once, together. And then, as I was running, I met a woman who had fallen. An older woman. She had blood all over her face. And she was holding her arm in pain. And there were other people already sitting with her, waiting with her. Do you see the heron? She's perched just above us. I stopped to see if I could help in any way, and there was nothing for me to do. She kept talking about falling, how easy it is to fall, how often she falls. She's pretty much used to it. And I was struck again, as I have been struck before, by the disconnection of so many people from their own bodies, from their own lived, felt sensory experience, and how expected it is as we age. Expected it is to lose control, lose touch, lose your physical connection to yourself. I spend a lot of time watching how people walk. Watching the movement of their feet, the flow of energy. And this is something I'm talking about right now because it has been very prominent in my world and my lived experience for some time now, of connecting the three. There's so many terms. In shamanism, there are the three realms. In Taoist principles, there are the three dantians. The way it's been communicated to me, they are the three seats of consciousness. I'm laughing with the ocean. Upper, middle, lower. There's a seat of consciousness connected to the brain. There's a seat of consciousness connected to the heart. We have neurons in our heart. There's a seat of consciousness connected to our gut, our lower body. Lots of neural connections in our gut. And those three seats of consciousness connect us to a whole expanded, multidimensional, multisensory lived experience when they are connected to each other and balanced. Healthy. And we have been learning balance, haven't we? But it's a long, ongoing lesson. There are many, many things that personally I don't understand still. I'm constantly reminded that I have touched the tip of the iceberg. Personally, I'm happy to be here. Just the tip has been pretty exciting and beautiful and interesting. And full of surprises. After meeting the woman with the bleeding face on the path, I continued my day and I began having a vision of a being made of pure white light veined with blue, with a pale sort of electric cyan blue, and very pale yellow. Just a hint. And the perspective was a little bit disorienting because it was almost as though I was seeing it like I was inside, standing at the base of this being. But then I also was seeing it as though from its perspective, high, high, high up, looking down as it lifted its feet from where they had been tangled in all of these twisting sort of viscous cords. And it was sort of carefully pulling them out, shaking them loose. It wasn't out yet, but it was in the process. It could see its own feet, and it could see where they were. And so all it really needed to do was just lift them and keep walking, because from that perspective, looking down, it was clear how small those vines were, how small the tethers, how small the things that felt like they were trapping it. Then in the second part of my day, I ended up inside of a lesson that a young woman was getting from her romantic partner on bass guitar. Or I'm not sure that it was a lesson exactly. They were playing together. He was teaching her a song that he had written. And I was there in the same room as them, making art. She was playing a red bass guitar. But it was short. It was a half bass. I'm not sure what the exact terminology is. His was full-sized. And they started talking about the difference in string length and how that affects the quality of the sound. The shorter strings on her guitar meant she had less fundamental, which is the lowest tone of the note, the meat that carries the note. And then the overtone is the higher frequency that sort of vibrates along top of it, gives it tooth. Texture. She said, my overtones are squished and I don't have very much fundamental. No wonder I can't hear the note. And this struck me. Because it continued the message of having existed in this kind of compressed state, in this middle world, unaware of the quantity and the quality of experience that is available to us as human beings. But that expansion is a holistic process, and you can only go as high as you go low. The base is necessary. You need that base. And it felt so good to hear the bass. I was happy. My body was humming with those bass notes. And I listened to them adjust the setting on her guitar so that the overtones weren't squished anymore. They couldn't do anything about the string length. And then her partner said something interesting. He said, to actually capture the full frequency of a note, the full bass on any instrument, on a piano, he started talking about pianos, you would need a piano so large that you would have to ascend a staircase to sit at it. You would need to climb. Then I opened a book, a random book that happened to be in the room with us. And it was a book from some sort of spiritual framework of somebody. I'm not sure. It didn't matter. I didn't look closely at it. But the important part is what my eye landed on, which was a paragraph that said, "Be not content with littleness. Yet what you do not realize each time you choose is that your choice is your evaluation of yourself. Choose littleness and you will not have peace because you will have judged yourself unworthy of it. It is essential that you accept the fact, and accept it gladly, that there is no form of littleness that can ever content you. For you will be content only in magnitude." I had a very interesting dream last night. There was a family. And I was sort of experiencing the dream from the perspective of the eldest daughter. And in the dream, there was this structure. There were 2 daughters and a mother. And she had a new husband. Their original father, it was unclear. He just wasn't there. And there was no real conflict or anything. It was a pretty peaceful dynamic between the 4 of them. And he had a very young child. A child without gender. Because really, that's the truth of all children, isn't it? And this child came to live with us. And it was what some people would say completely feral, completely wild, completely free, I would say. It was just purely in itself. And this child was, the parents, they didn't know what to do with it because it was just running all around on the floor. They couldn't get it to sit in a chair or be contained in any way. There was so much life, so much vigor, so much energy pouring out of this little being, and it just kept saying no whenever they tried to control it, force it in any direction. No, no, no. And the mother left. She just left. She said this is too much, and she left. And the 2 daughters stayed. Even though the only relative of theirs who was a relative by blood had just left. But they stayed. And the eldest daughter, who I was viewing things from the perspective of, she had a level of understanding and respect even for this young being, this child. She could communicate with it in a way that the adults couldn't. She didn't want to force it to be anything or to do anything, but she recognized that somebody had to actually take care of it, and nobody else was doing that. And then it was though everything sort of sped up, fast forwarded in time. Is that a word? Went forward in time. There was sort of a brief montage of these three siblings growing up together, and basically it was made clear that this oldest sibling was a very powerful being who was pretty much sustaining the existence of the whole family unit. This father, he was there, but he wasn't really he was not actually generating. He wasn't keeping anything going. He was working, and he was doing what he understood to be his role. But the pin that the wheel of this family unit and the reality that they lived in together turned on was this eldest daughter, and she knew it. She was very aware, very conscious. And she had been sharing a room with this child, this unruly, untamable child. And now we've moved forward in time to the point where this child is no longer a child. They're an adolescent. And the eldest daughter is almost a woman. And they're agreeing together that it's time for them to be in separate rooms. It's long overdue, really. But for some reason, the father he doesn't want anything to change. It's as though they've moved forward in time, but he hasn't realized it. He hasn't noticed somehow that they've all grown older around him. And she doesn't ask him, she doesn't consult him. She's a woman at this point. She just moves into her own room. And she goes through all the daily rituals and the tasks, and she makes sure everything is in order, everything is the way that he likes it, and everything is running smoothly. And then she calmly settles herself into her room, her space, that is her space only, her sovereign space. And he comes home, and he comes into the room, and he's looking around, and he's not really saying much, and she's sitting there silently just watching him. It's a wordless interaction. And she's sitting at a desk, and there's a bag on the desk of flatbread, like naan maybe. And they're just looking at each other, and she takes a piece of bread and starts eating it. And that action triggers something in him where he suddenly realizes that she is going to leave. She's going to leave very soon. She's a woman. She's an adult. And she isn't going to be in his house anymore. And this triggers his feeling state from when the mother left, which he never got over, he never processed. And again, there's no words spoken this whole time. He just walks over to the door and very slowly, very deliberately pulls it off of its hinges. And the sound of the nails screaming and the wood splintering, fills the air. And he pulls the door off and he walks away. And the daughter sits there, and her eyes narrow as she looks at the symbol of the boundary to her sovereign space, which has just been ripped open, ripped away. And she's sitting there very calm, very still. And there's still no words spoken, but I am seeing it through her eyes, and I'm feeling what she's feeling, and I know that he thought that he was asserting his power, but in reality he just solidified the very thing he was afraid of, and she's gone. She is gone. Her decision is completely made in that moment. As I was walking down here to make this recording, I found myself at a spot by this creek that I'm sitting at right now that empties out into the ocean. A different spot than where I am now. A very special spot that it wouldn't be respectful to record at. And I was sitting there and I was told that a person can only reach a certain point without having reflections around them who are putting in the same type of effort that they are. People who are similarly motivated, regardless of how different the end goal may be, regardless of where exactly they're going. But those types of reflections need to be earned. And they have been. I also saw the deer again today. The dying deer. It was standing on one side of the street, and I was standing in the center of the street. And on the other side of the street, walking right by me, was a woman on the phone who was saying happy birthday to somebody. On my right side, a deer stood dying, and on my left side, a woman stood saying happy birthday. And then I went home, and as I walked into the backyard, the neighbors in the house beside us were singing happy birthday. So to you hearing these words, I would like to say happy birthday. Thank you for hearing me. Thank you for going through whatever it is that you've gone through. To get here to this point, to this tip of the iceberg. In a vast ocean that could have taken you anywhere. Thank you for sharing this moment with me and Duck and Heron, who's still sitting in the tree above us. Bye for now.